Imagine a sound so profoundly simple, so utterly repetitive, that it underpinned an entire civilization for nearly 1,000 years. Not the clash of swords or the roar of the crowd, but the ceaseless, methodical whisper of stone on grain. It was the hum that fueled an empire, a rhythm so foundational it shaped history. And tonight, that very same ancient, unhurried drone will be the calm that guides you. Welcome back to Dreamweave History. Tonight we're drifting into the serene, often overlooked world of ancient Roman grain mills. We'll explore the calming monotony of a task so mundane it was rarely recorded, yet so vital it kept an empire fed. And I guarantee, by the end of this journey, we'll find a surprising peace in the very things history often forgets to mention. If you're looking for a peaceful escape from the modern world and want to explore history's tranquil side with us every week, make sure you hit that subscribe button right now. So settle in, take a deep breath, and let the gentle rhythm of antiquity wash over you as we journey into the heart of a Roman mill. Now let us draw a little closer and truly begin our exploration. Picture, if you will, the beating heart of Roman daily life. Not in the bustling forum or the grand amphitheater, but within a much more humble, yet profoundly essential structure: the Roman mill. This was not a place of grand pronouncements or heroic deeds, but a locus of quiet, persistent labor. A space where the very sustenance of the empire was brought forth from stubborn grain. At its core, the Roman mill was a marvel of elegant simplicity, a testament to practical engineering honed over centuries. Its primary purpose, of course, was to transform hard, unyielding kernels of wheat, barley, or millet into the fine, powdery flour that will become bread, porridge, and countless other dishes. And this transformation, while seemingly straightforward, required a beautifully balanced interplay of robust materials and repetitive motion. A ballet of stone and seed performed day in and day out. Across the vast expanse, the Roman world, let's begin by envisioning its fundamental form, a shape that, once understood, reveals the genius in its apparent straightforwardness. The typical Roman mill, especially those powered by animals, presented a distinctive silhouette. It was composed primarily of two massive millstones, working in concert. These were not mere flat discs, but intricately shaped giants, designed to maximize efficiency and longevity. At the very top, we would find the mechanism designed to feed the beast. This was the hopper, a robust container, often crafted from wood or sometimes even incorporated into the upper millstone itself. Imagine a wide open mouth, narrowing gracefully towards its base, forming a funnel. This hopper, or meditative, as it might have been known, was the initial reservoir for the raw, unground grain. It held the promise of the meal to come, a silent store of countless tiny seeds, waiting for their turn to begin their journey. Our grain, poured in carefully from sacks, would rest here, a gentle cascade of golden and amber hues. Perhaps catching the faint light filtering in from an open doorway, its design ensured a steady, controlled descent of grain, preventing either a wasteful deluge or an irritating trickle. The rhythm of replenishment was slow, a deliberate pouring. Grain spilling from a leather apron or a wooden scoop, a soft, dry rustle-like sand sifting through fingers. This hopper was the beginning of the journey, the point where the potential energy of the stored grain began its slow, inevitable conversion. Beneath the hopper, we encounter the true workhorses of the mill. The two millstones. The upper moving stone was known as the meta, or catalyst, although these terms could sometimes be used interchangeably or refer to slightly different parts depending on the specific mill type. For the animal-powered mills, which were ubiquitous in Roman bakeries and larger households, this upper stone possessed a distinctive, almost hourglass-like or biconical shape. Envision a large, heavy stone hollowed out from below to fit over the lower stone, and also hollowed out from above to receive the grain from the hopper. It was a complex form, resembling two truncated cones joined at their narrow ends. The inner surface where the grain would be crushed was rough, purposefully abrasive. A landscape of minute peaks and valleys designed for maximum friction. This upper stone was the dynamic element, the agent of change, constantly turning, constantly grinding. Sheer weight was an integral part of its function, providing the immense pressure necessary to rupture and pulverize the tough outer husks of the grain. The lower millstone, the stationary anchor of this ancient mechanism, was called the catalyst or mola inferior. This stone was shaped to perfectly complement the upper stone, forming a negative impression of its working surface. It was typically conical or slightly domed, rising to a central point around which the upper stone would pivot. Its surface, like that of its partner, was meticulously textured with grooves and lands, designed not only to abrade the grain, but also to channel the resulting flour outwards, away from the grinding surface, ensuring a continuous flow and preventing clogging. This lower stone bore the brunt of the crushing force, patiently enduring the relentless rotation above it, a steadfast foundation for the work being done. It was fixed firmly in place, either directly into the ground or onto a sturdy wooden or stone base, resolute and unwavering. Connecting these two monumental stones, and indeed making the entire operation possible, was the axle or spindle. This sturdy central shaft, usually made of iron or exceptionally tough wood, passed through the center of the lower stone and extended up into the upper stone. It was the pivot, the axis around which the world of the mill turned. This spindle transmitted the rotational force from the power source, be it a human arm, a patient donkey, or the more advanced flow of water upwards to the heavy upper millstone, setting it into its slow, deliberate rotation. The interaction between the spindle and the stones was critical, dictating the precise alignment and ensuring a smooth, consistent grind. It needed to be perfectly vertical, perfectly stable, for any wobble or misalignment would result in an uneven grind, reduced efficiency, and unnecessary wear on the precious stones. Supporting this entire weighty ensemble was a robust frame or base, often carved from stone or constructed from heavy timbers. This base provided stability, elevating the lower millstone to a manageable height and creating a space underneath for the collection of the freshly ground flour. It was the bedrock of the entire operation, designed to withstand the constant vibrations and immense forces generated by the grinding process. Imagine the deep-set foundations, the solid, unyielding support that held these massive stones in perfect alignment, allowing them to perform their quiet, essential work. While the fundamental components remained consistent, the Romans, ever pragmatic, developed several variations of the mill to suit different scales of production and available resources. The most rudimentary, and certainly the oldest, form was the hand mill, or quern. These were small, portable, and often found in individual households or smaller military encampments. A quern consisted of two relatively flat, circular stones. The lower stone was stationary, often with a slight concave depression. The upper stone, equipped with a handle, was rotated by hand, grinding a small handful of grain placed between the two surfaces. The sound of a hand quern was intimate, a gentle scraping, a soft rhythmiches, a personal testament to the daily necessity of preparing food. It required direct human effort, a steady arm, and a persistent will, yielding small amounts of flour, just enough for the daily needs of a family. This was the silent, personal grind, a meditative task performed by countless individuals throughout antiquity. For larger needs, especially in the bustling bakeries of cities like Rome and Pompeii, the donkey or animal-powered mill, known as a millarium or mola as an area, became the standard. This is the iconic image many of us hold when we think of a Roman mill. These mills were significantly larger and heavier than hand querns, designed to process substantial quantities of grain. The upper millstone, with its characteristic hourglass shape, would have projecting wooden arms or yokes attached. To these yokes, a donkey, or sometimes an ox or horse, would be harnessed. The animal, blindfolded or simply conditioned, would then walk in a slow, patient, monotonous circle around the mill, its steady, plodding gait providing the rotational power. The creak of the harness, the soft shuffle of hooves on packed earth, the occasional snort, all blended with the ceaseless rumble of stone on grain. This was the rhythm of the Roman bakery, a constant low drone that permeated the air, sound both industrious and profoundly calming in its unwavering consistency. These mills were often arranged in rows within the pistrina, each animal performing its quiet duty, a small living engine of sustenance. The scene would be one of perpetual, unhurried motion, a testament to the efficient, somewhat laborious harnessing of animal power.
And then, representing the pinnacle of Roman milling technology, we have the water mills, or molendina. These were much rarer, requiring specific geographical conditions, a reliable, flowing source of water, but where they could be built, they offered a remarkable leap in efficiency, replacing animal or human labor with the tireless force of nature. Water mills utilized a large water wheel, either undershot, where the water flows beneath and pushes paddles, or overshot, which would turn an axle. This axle, through a system of gears, would then transmit the rotational energy to the millstones. Imagine the rhythmic splash and gurgle of the water wheel, the steady hum of the gears, a different kind of mechanical music, but one equally repetitive and soothing. The soundscape here would be dominated by the moving water, a constant liquid whisper accompanying the dry rasp of the grinding stones. These installations were often much larger, capable of processing vast amounts of grain, feeding legions and cities with an automated, relentless efficiency that would not be surpassed for centuries. The impressive Barbagal watermill complex in Gaul, for instance, featured an astonishing 16 water wheels arranged in a cascade, capable of grinding enough flour for an entire Roman city. The sheer scale was breathtaking, but the underlying principle remained the same: the patient, repetitive friction of stone on grain. Now, let us delve a little deeper into the very heart of the operation: the shores, millstones themselves. These were not merely any old rocks. Their quality was paramount, directly impacting the efficiency of the grinding process and the quality of the resulting flour. The Romans, with their sophisticated understanding of materials, meticulously sourced specific types of stone. Volcanic rocks were highly prized, particularly varieties like basalt or dense, porous lava. Famous quarries for these essential stones were found in places like Orvieto in Italy, or along the Rhine in regions that are now part of Germany. Why volcanic rock? Because of its inherent properties: exceptional hardness, which made it durable and resistant to wear, and a natural, slightly abrasive texture, which was perfect for tearing and crushing the grain. Imagine touching one, feeling the subtle grit, the unyielding strength, a stone born of fire, now destined to nourish. The craftsmanship involved in shaping these monumental stones was remarkable. They were not simply cut, but painstakingly carved and dressed. The working surfaces of both the upper and lower stones were adorned with intricate patterns of grooves and lands. These were not merely decorative. The grooves, or furrows, radiated outwards from the center, often in spiral or radial patterns, serving a crucial dual purpose. First, they provided sharp, cutting edges, essentially functioning like teeth to shear and crush the grain as it entered the grinding space. Second, and equally important, they acted as channels, guiding the ground flour outwards from the center to the periphery of the stones, where it could then be collected. The raised areas between the grooves were known as the lands, providing the primary crushing surface. The precise design and depth of these grooves were vital, influencing the fineness of the flour and the efficiency of the mill. Imagine the patient, skilled hands of the stone carver, meticulously chipping away, shaping the unyielding rock, knowing that the very sustenance of the community depended on the perfection of their craft. The weight and size keys of these millstones were truly imposing. The larger animal-powered stones could easily weigh several tons. This immense weight was not a drawback, but an essential part of their functionality, providing the crushing force necessary to reduce the grain to flour. Moving and setting these stones in place would have been a monumental task, requiring levers, rollers, and the coordinated effort of many strong individuals or even specialized machinery. Once in place, however, their very mass contributed to their stability and the smooth, powerful grind they provided. Maintaining these vital implements was an ongoing task. Over time, the constant friction would wear down the sharp edges of the grooves and lands, dulling their effectiveness. Therefore, the millstones required periodic dressing. This involved lifting the heavy upper stone, a laborious process in itself, and then carefully recutting the grooves and roughening the surfaces of both stones using specialized picks and chisels. This was a skilled job, requiring a deep understanding of the stone and the milling process. The sound of stone dressing would be a different kind of rhythm within the mill. Sharp, metallic chips against rock, a percussive, almost musical series of strikes, signaling a temporary pause in the grinding, a rejuvenation of the mill's very soul. The environment of the mill itself was unique, a microcosm of Roman industry and daily life. Mills were typically located where grain was processed into bread, within the numerous bakeries, or pistrina, that dotted Roman towns and cities, on large agricultural estates, or sometimes even as part of public works projects, like the grand mills at Janiculum in Rome.
The atmosphere within a mill would have been distinctive. There would be a pervasive fine dust hanging in the air, a pale, almost golden haze catching the shafts of sunlight. This was the flour itself, suspended in the air, coating every surface with a soft, powdery film. The smell would be rich and earthy, the warm, wholesome scent of dry grain, mingled with the sweeter, more complex aroma of freshly milled flour, scent that speaks of nourishment, of life, of honest labor. There would be the constant low hum of the grinding stones, a deep, resonant rumble, a sound that, over time, would become almost imperceptible to those who worked there, blending into the background of thy existence. It was a sound that was both monotonous and profoundly reassuring, a constant reminder of purpose and production. And at the heart of this environment, performing the repetitive, vital tasks, were the mill workers or pisters and molinari. Their days would have been long, filled with the steady rhythm of pouring grain into the hopper, collecting the flour, shifting sacks, and maintaining the machinery. It was a life of quiet dedication, of strength and endurance, where the greatest reward was the consistent flow of flour, the smooth operation of the mill, and the knowledge that their labor directly contributed to the feeding of countless people. Their movements would be practiced, economical, imbued with the deep understanding that comes from countless repetitions. They would move with an unhurried grace, guided by the mill's own steady pulse. As we stand here, amidst the imagined dust and the soft hum, we can almost feel the gentle tremor of the earth beneath our feet from the turning stones. We've laid the foundation. Understanding the ingenious structure and the patient function of these ancient machines, we've seen how simple components, when combined with human ingenuity and animal power or the force of water, could achieve such profound results. And now, with this intricate understanding of the mill's structure firmly in our minds, we are ready to take the next step. Our journey into the heart of the Roman milling process continues as we prepare to introduce the very first element into this weighting system. It is time for the grain itself to begin its slow, deliberate transformation. It is time for the unceasing flow, pouring the grain. And so, with this intricate understanding of the mill's structure firmly in our minds, we are ready to take the next step. Our journey into the heart of the Roman milling process continues as we prepare to introduce the very first element into this weighting system. It is time for the grain itself to begin its slow, deliberate transformation. It is time for the unceasing flow, pouring the grain. Imagine, if you will, the grain waiting in the quiet corners of the mill house. It would have arrived in sturdy sacks, woven from coarse fibers, perhaps linen or hemp, each one filled to a satisfying plumpness with the harvest from distant fields. These sacks, when lifted, would have offered a substantial weight, a tangible testament to the earth's bounty. The mill workers, men and women of considerable strength and quiet endurance, would have become intimately familiar with this particular kind of burden, would have known the exact feel of a well-filled sack off heat, its slight give, its gentle resistance, the way the kernels inside shifted with a soft collective sigh as it was hoisted onto a shoulder. The grain itself, primarily wheat or barley for the Roman diet, would have been a dry, humble, yet profoundly vital commodity. Picture its texture, if you close your eyes for a moment. Feel the cool, smooth surface of individual kernels, hard and unyielding between the fingertips. Observe their subtle variations in color, from a pale, creamy yellow to a deeper, more golden brown, each kernel a tiny, encapsulated promise of sustenance. Before it reached the mill, this grain would have been carefully cleaned, separating the precious kernels from chaff, stones, and other debris. So what was prepared for milling was a relatively pure, dry stream of potential. The act of pouring this grain into the mill's hopper was not a rushed or frantic motion. It was a practiced, almost ritualistic task, performed with an unhurried grace that spoke of generations of knowledge passed down. The mill worker would approach the mill, perhaps carrying a single heavy sack, or perhaps using a scoop or a smaller manageable basket to transfer grain from a larger storage bin. Each step would be deliberate, each movement measured. The rhythm of the mill, the constant hum and grind, would have been an internal clock for them, dictating the unhurried pace of their work. Standing bare the mill, the worker would position the sack or basket over the wide mouth of the hopper. The hopper itself was usually a robust, inverted pyramid or cone crafted from sturdy wood, its smooth, worn surface bearing the marks of countless previous pours. It was the initial recipient, the welcoming gateway for the grain's journey. Its wide opening tapered downwards, leading the kernels gently towards the eye of the millstones below. It waited, a silent wooden vessel, for its steady replenishment. With a slight incline of the sack, a careful loosening of its mouth, the first trickles of grain would begin their descent. Imagine the soft whispering sound as these initial kernels spilled forth. A dry, rustling murmur, thought, foreshadowed the greater cascade to come. It was a sound that was surprisingly intimate, almost secretive, like sand sifting through an hourglass, marking the beginning of another cycle. These first grains would fall with a light pitter-patter against the wooden sides of the hopper, then settle softly at its base, creating a small golden mound. Then, with a more confident tilt, the stream would become steadier, fuller. A continuous flow, a cascade, countless individual kernels would pour into the hopper. This was not a violent rush, but a consistent, deliberate outpouring guided by the worker's steady hands. The sound would deepen, transforming into a more sustained, continuous shush-shush-shush, a gentle, almost hypnotic whisper that filled the immediate space around the mill. This sound would blend with the deeper hum of the turning stones, creating a layered auditory experience that was both subtle and encompassing. Visually, it would have been a captivating sight. A golden river flowing into a wooden basin, each kernel distinct yet part of an inseparable whole. The dry, earthy scent of the grain would rise slightly, mingling with the fainter, sweet aroma of flour that already permeated the air. It was a smell that spoke of the fields, of sunlight and soil, of honest growth and potential. As the grain settled into the hopper, it would form a gently sloping mound, its surface shimmering faintly under the dim light. A tiny landscape of individual, unhurried forms. The worker's gaze would be steady, focused, ensuring an even and consistent flow, their movements economical, honed by endless repetition. The hopper's design was not simply to hold the grain, but to feed it in a controlled manner into the grinding stones. This controlled descent was crucial for efficient milling. At the bottom of the hopper, there would be a smaller opening, letting ginto, a device commonly known as a shoe or a feed spout. This was typically a wooden trough, often slightly inclined, designed to guide the grain from the hopper's base directly into the central opening, off the upper millstone. But simply allowing gravity to pull the grain through the shoe would not ensure a consistent flow. The brilliance of Roman mill engineering, often simple yet profoundly effective, incorporated a mechanism to regulate this. Attached to the rotating spindle or shaft that powered the upper millstone, there would be a projection, a wooden peg, or a form of clapper. As the spindle turned, this projection would rhythmically strike the shoe, causing it to vibrate. Imagine this now, the subtle percussive addition to the mill's symphony. With each rotation of the spindle, there would be a gentle yet persistent tap, 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 or a soft thump, thump against the shoe. This vibration was not loud or jarring. Rather, it was a steady, rhythmic pulse that became an intrinsic part of the mill's song. And what was the effect of this continuous tapping? It caused the grain within the shoe to constantly shift and move, preventing it from clogging and ensuring a slow, even trickle of kernels directly into the grinding surfaces of the stones below. This sound, this regular, unhurried thump, 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 would have been a constant companion to the mill workers. It was the audible proof that the mill was alive and functioning, that the grain was moving, that the process of transformation was well underway. For an observer, it was another element contributing to the deeply soothing, repetitive atmosphere of the mill. It was the sound of controlled progress, of patient mechanical rhythm. The mill worker, overseeing this process, would not merely pour the grain and then walk away. Their role was one of quiet vigilance. It would ensure that the hopper never ran empty, a task requiring a steady supply of grain nearby and the physical effort to continually replenish it. They might also make subtle adjustments to the shoe, perhaps by moving a small wedge or peg, to finely tune the rate at which the grain flowed. Too much grain, and the stones could become clogged, grinding inefficiently, or even stopping. Too little, and the mill would be running idle, wasting precious energy. Finding that perfect balance was a skill honed over countless hours. A deep understanding of the mill's temperamental nature. So, the pouring of the grain was not a singular event, but a continuous, recurring cycle throughout the day. A sack would be emptied, then another brought forward. The gentle shush of the pour, the settling pitter-patter, the steady thump-thump-thump of the shoe. These sounds would repeat themselves hour after hour. The mill workers' movements would become almost automatic, a seamless dance of lifting, tilting, pouring, and adjusting. Their focus would be intense yet calm, their mind attuned to the subtle changes in the mill's sounds, knowing instinctively when to add more, when to pause, when to make a minor adjustment. This unceasing flow, this constant replenishment, was the lifeblood of the mill. It represented the continuous input of raw potential. The steady supply thought-fueled the entire operation. Without this vigilant pouring, the grinding would cease. The flour would stop flowing, and the vital process of feeding the Roman population would grind to a halt. It was a humble yet indispensable task, the foundation upon which all the subsequent transformations rested. Imagine the consistency of this task. A worker might spend an entire day, or even several days, engaged in little more than this steady, rhythmic feeding of the mill. The weight of the sacks, the rustle of the grain, the fine dust that would settle on their clothes, the persistent low thrum of the machinery, and the rhythmic thump-thump of the shoe. These would become the defining features of their working life. There was a profound simplicity to it, a direct connection to the fundamental needs of humanity. In this environment of soft sounds and steady rhythms, one could easily lose track of time. The repetitive motion of pouring, the predictable flow of the grain, the consistent vibration of the shoe, these elements would combine to create a deeply meditative atmosphere. The mind could wander, or it could settle into a state of focused tranquility, attuned only to the immediate task. There was no rush, no urgency in the modern sense. Time was measured not by the clock, but by the filling and emptying of hoppers, by the slow, unhurried progression of the grain from its raw state to its eventual transformation. As we witness this steady, unceasing flow, we become aware of the sheer scale of ancient industry. These mills were not just isolated curiosities. They were vital engines of an empire, processing immense quantities of grain to feed bustling cities and vast armies. The accumulative act of countless mill workers, and countless mills across the Roman world, performing this exact same repetitive task, day in and day out, is almost unfathomable. Each pour, each grain, contributed to a colossal endeavor of sustenance. And so, the grain continues its slow descent. From the open mouth of the hopper, down through the regulating shoe. It is guided with patient precision towards the very heart of the mill. It is a journey of mere inches, yet it is the most crucial transition. Each tiny kernel is now poised at the threshold of change, ready to be drawn into the embrace of the massive stones. The gentle thump-thump-thump of the shoe echoes through the air, a final rhythmic reminder of the steady supply, ushering the grain forward, one measured trickle at a time. The unceasing flow continues, a timeless dance between human intention and the patient mechanics of the mill, preparing for the next, even more transformative stage of its journey. And so, the grain, having completed its gentle descent from the hopper, having been measured and guided by the regulating shoe, now finds itself at the very precipice of its transformation. It rests for a fleeting moment at the central eye of the mill, poised to be drawn into the most intimate embrace of the millstones. This is where the true alchemy occurs, where the rough, unyielding kernel surrenders to the patient power of the stone, giving way to the soft promise of flower. Imagine, if you will, these colossal circles of stone. They are the heart of the mill, an imposing presence that dominates the space, often crafted from dense, hard volcanic rock or perhaps a durable quartzite. Sometimes even a finely grained sandstone. These stones are not merely heavy. They are monumental. Their weight is immense, a testament to the raw, unyielding power they hold. Picture a lower stone known as the bedstone, steadfast and unmoving, anchored firmly to the mill's structure. Above it, separated by a crucial, almost imperceptible gap, hovers the runner stone, its twin, suspended by a central spindle and ready to spin with a quiet, tireless determination. The surface is off. These stones are not smooth. Far from it. They bear intricate patterns, meticulously carved channels and ridges known as the dress. These patterns are critical, forming a sophisticated system of furrows and lands. The furrows are deep grooves that radiate from the center, acting as pathways to guide the grain outwards as the stone rotates. The lands are the flatter, raised areas between the furrows where the actual grinding takes place. This carefully engineered design ensures that the grain is not merely crushed, but rather sheared and abraded into flour, drawn progressively finer as it moves from the center to the periphery. The dressing of the stones is a craft in itself, a repetitive and demanding task performed by skilled millwrights who, with hammer and pick, would painstakingly resharpen and reshape these patterns, ensuring the mill's efficiency and the quality of its output. It was a rhythmic chipping, a precise, measured act of maintenance that resonated through the quiet hours of the mill, a softer, higher-pitched echo to the grinding itself. As the upper stone begins its slow, deliberate rotation, driven by the turning of a water wheel, an animal, or perhaps human hands, a gentle suction is created. This draws weighting kernels from the central eye, pulling them into the narrow, dark chasm between the two great stones. It is here, in this confined, powerful space, that the real work begins. Each kernel, tumbling and sliding, is caught between the rotating upper stone and the stationary lower stone. The initial contact is subtle, a mere caress of friction, but as the grain moves outwards, caught by the radiating furrows, the pressure increases. It is not an instant, violent pulverization. Instead, it is a gradual, patient breaking down. Consider the journey of a single grain of wheat. It enters whole, its hard, protective outer layer intact. As it is carried by the momentum of the rotating stone and guided by precisely carved channels, begins to chafe against its brethren, against the rough surfaces of the stones themselves. The first stage is a breaking open of the husk, a stripping away of its defenses. Then, as it moves further outwards, the more delicate internal components begin to fragment. The starch endosperm, the very heart of the grain, is slowly, methodically reduced to ever finer particles. It is a process of continual friction, of gentle abrasion, a persistent, unhurried erosion of the grain's integrity. The stones do not merely crush, they grind, they rub, they shear, ensuring that every part of the kernel is worked upon, transformed from a solid seed into a soft, powdery substance. The sound of this process is truly one of the most hypnotic aspects of a Roman mill. It is not a loud, jarring sound, but rather a deep, consistent rumble, a pervasive hum that permeates the entire structure. Beneath this steady drone, one can discern a softer, more intimate sound, a gentle, rhythmic rasping, the whisper of countless tiny particles being reduced and smoothed. It is the sound of friction, yes, but a friction that speaks of steady work rather than violent force. There might be a subtle she as the flour is pushed outwards, a soft sigh of accomplishment. It is a sound that, once settled into, becomes almost imperceptible, blending into the background of one's consciousness, a continuous sautatory anchor. This grinding is not a swift, hurried affair. The speed of the millstone's rotation is carefully calibrated. Too fast, and the grain might be scorched by the intense friction or thrown out prematurely. Too slow, and the output would be insufficient for the needs of a city or an army. The rhythm is unhurried, yet relentless. It is a testament to the power of consistency. Turn after turn, revolution after revolution, the upper stone pursues its patient circuit, a steady, predictable motion that speaks of enduring industry. This constant, predictable rotation creates a deep, resonant vibration that emanates from the millstones and spreads throughout the wooden and stone structure of the mill. One can feel it through the floorboards, a subtle tremor that rises through the soles of one's feet up into the very bones. It is a grounding sensation, a physical manifestation of the mill's ceaseless activity, connecting the worker directly to the machinery. The sensory experience within the embrace of the millstones is multifaceted and deeply immersive. Close your eyes for a moment and simply listen. The omnipresent rumble, a low guttural growl that seems to emanate from the very earth itself. It is born of stone against stone. Beneath this, the gentle she of the grains being transformed, a sound so delicate yet so pervasive. The air around you. It caressed the faint, almost imperceptible vibration, a sympathetic tremor that suggests the immense power contained within the stones. And then there is the smell. Oh, the smell. It is distinct and utterly captivating. The sweet, earthy aroma of freshly milled grain begins to permeate the air, a fragrance far more complex and inviting than that of raw kernels. It is a scent of warmth and sustenance, the scent of potential, of bread not yet baked. And if you were to reach out, you might feel the fine, almost invisible dust that gently settles on every surface, a tangible byproduct of the stone's ceaseless work. Visually, the upper stone becomes a blur, a rotating disk of gray, while at its center, the steady, thin stream of grain continues to feed the maw. Round its periphery, a growing accumulation of pristine, creamy flour emerges, the tangible result of this enduring process. This entire process is truly the millstone's patient embrace. The metaphor is apt. For the stones take the raw, wild grain, and with a slow, deliberate persistence, transform it into something refined and vital. There's no haste, no frantic energy in this embrace, but rather a steady, almost tender application of power. It is an ancient wisdom embedded in this slow transformation, a recognition that some processes cannot be rushed. The quality of the flour, its texture, its very essence, depends on this measured pace. This stands in stark contrast to the modern world's often frenetic pursuit of speed and efficiency. In the Roman mill, time was an ally, allowing for the complete and proper reduction of each kernel. For the mill worker, who spends countless hours within this environment, observing the millstones, becomes an almost meditative act. Their ears become attuned to every nuance of the grinding sound. A change in pitch or rhythm might indicate that the hopper is running low, or that the gap between the stones needs adjustment, or that a foreign object has entered. The smell of the flour, its color, its temperature, all provide subtle cues, allowing the experienced miller to make minute adjustments, ensuring the consistent quality of the output. This is not simply a mechanical process. It is a dialogue between human and machine, a subtle interplay of observation and response. The worker's presence, their watchful eye and listening ear, completes the circuit of the mill, an integral part of its unending rhythm. The mind, freed from frantic urgency, could wander through thoughts or simply settle into a state of focused tranquility, attuned only to the immediate task, the gentle hum of the stones becoming a soothing mantra. The significance of this transformation from whole cornelto usable flour cannot be overstated. It is a fundamental alchemy, the initial step in creating the very staff of life. Without this precise, patient grinding, the grain would remain largely inedible for human consumption. This slow, steady work off millstones is the beginning of bread. It's a foundation of sustenance for families, for cities, for vast legions. It is the core of an empire's ability to feed itself, to thrive. The immense quantities of grain that passed through countless millstones across the Roman world represented a monumental collective effort, each single kernel contributing to the continuity of civilization. While the primary focus is on wheat, it is worth noting that different types of grain, barley, spelt, would have passed through these same stones, sometimes requiring subtle adjustments to the gap or the speed of rotation. The stones themselves, despite their immense hardness, were subject to wear and tear. The constant friction would slowly, imperceptibly, erode their surfaces, dulling the crucial dress and diminishing their efficiency. This necessitated the recurring task of redressing the stones, a moment when the mill would fall silent. Allowing for the meticulous work of reshaping and sharpening the patterns, preparing them for countless more hours of patient embrace. This maintenance, too, was a rhythmic act, a chipping and tapping that ensured the mill's enduring capacity for transformation. It was a reminder that even the most powerful tools required care, a constant human efforto, maintain the flow of sustenance. The cycle was complete: the grain, the pour, the regulation, and finally, the patient. Enduring embrace of the millstones, transforming potential into reality, day after quiet day. From the patient, enduring embrace of the millstones, where the raw potential of the grain has been silently working its transformation, there begins to emerge the very essence of that which will sustain. It is a slow, almost imperceptible unveiling, a subtle change that gathers momentum not with speed, but with relentless, quiet persistence. The relentless friction, the gentle pressure, the ceaseless dance of the upper stone upon the lower, has been slowly, methodically, breaking down each individual kernel, a process that might seem violent in its microscopic detail, yet, on the larger scale of the mill, unfolds with a hushed, almost tender grace, and then it appears, not in a rush, not in a sudden burst, but as a fine, ethereal dust. It's beginning to whisper from beneath the sturdy bulk of the grinding stones. It is the flower. The very word carries with it a sense of quiet fulfillment, of a journey completed. It issues forth in a soft, steady stream, an ever-flowing testament to the work within. Imagine standing beside the mill, listening to the rhythmic grind, and then slowly, your eyes are drawn to the discharged chute where the first pale wisps begin to curl and drift. The initial appearance of this flower is often a revelation. It is not the vibrant golden hue of the raw grain, nor the rough, fibrous texture of the husk. Instead, it possesses a delicate, almost luminous quality. Its color might be a creamy off-white, a pale ochre, or even a very light brown. Depending on the type of grain, the coarseness of the grind, and the specific composition of the kernel itself. But what truly captivates is its texture. As it emerges, it appears as a cloud, so fine that it seems to defy gravity for a moment, hanging in the air before settling into a soft, accumulating pile. Reach out, if you will, and let a small amount drift onto your palm. Feel its silkiness, its almost impalpable powderiness. It is dry yet not coarse, delicate yet possessing a subtle weight that speaks of its density. It clings gentlito, the skin leaving a fine, pearlescent film. This is the product of countless minute impacts and abrasions, each one contributing to the breakdown of the kernel's structure. The hard outer bran has been scraped and abraded, the starchy endosperm within crushed and pulverized, the germ with its oils gently pressed. The process within the stones is one of gradual reduction. Each time a grain passes between the turning surfaces, it is not simply smashed, but subjected to aceries of progressive transformations. The deeper grooves of the millstones first catch the whole kernels, breaking them into larger fragments. Then, as these fragments are carried towards the outer edge of the stones by centrifugal force, they encounter finer grooves and tighter spaces. Here the grinding action becomes more intense, the particles becoming smaller and smaller with each revolution. It is a testament to the patient engineering of the Roman world, a system designed to achieve a specific outcome through continuous, measured force. The constant slow turning ensures that no single particle is rushed through the process. Instead, each fragment has ample time to be worked, to be rubbed and crushed, until it reaches the desired fineness. This consistency is key. A good miller would know the precise speed at which to turn the stones, the exact gap to maintain, to produce flour that was neither too coarse nor too fine, but just right for the baking of bread. Too coarse, and the bread would be heavy and uneven. Too fine, and the flour might become dense and less desirable. This balance was the art within the grind. As the flour gently cascades from the stones, it often carries with it a subtle warmth. This is the tangible result of all that friction, all that energy expended in the process of pulverization. It is not a heat that burns or scorches, but a gentle, comforting warmth, reminiscent of fresh soil or sun-baked earth. This warmth is part of its freshness, a sign of its recent birth from the heart of the grain. It hints at the life that was once contained within the kernel, now released in a form ready for a new creation. This warmth also contributes to the aroma that begins to fill the air around the mill. There is a distinct earthy sweetness, a deep, nourishing scent, that is utterly unique to freshly milled grain. It is a smell that speaks of abundance, of sustenance, of the very essence of life. It's not the sharp, yeasty aroma of baking bread, but the raw, unadorned promise of it. It is a scent that would have been deeply familiar to anyone living in the Roman world, constant, comforting presence in any settlement where grain was processed. It would mingle with the damp, cool scent of stone, the occasional whiff of animal sweat if the mill was powered by beasts, and the ever-present clean scent of flowing water if it was a water mill. But above all, the smell of flour would dominate, a foundation of scent, just as it was a foundation of food. As the flour continues to emerge, it flows into a wooden chute or channel, guided by the mill's design into a collection bin or chest. Here, it begins to accumulate, a growing mound of pale, soft powder. The sound it makes as it falls is another subtle yet pervasive element of the mill's atmosphere. It is not a splash or a clang, but a delicate, almost inaudible whisper, a soft rustle as one fine particle settles upon another. It is the sound of thousands upon thousands of tiny fragments finding their rest, building up the promise of tomorrow's meal. This whisper, combined with the deeper, more resonant hum of the stones and the rhythmic splash of the water wheel, creates a unique symphony of productivity and peace. For many Roman mills, especially those producing flour for a wider market or for the legions, the process did not end with the initial grind. The flour, as it emerged from the stones, was not yet entirely uniform. It still contained varying proportions of the coarser bran, theater layers of the grain, which, while nutritious, could lead to a heavier, denser bread. Thus, the next crucial step was often sifting. Imagine, then, the flour, warm and aromatic, collected into large shallow basks or wooden trays. A miller, or one of his assistants, would then begin the slow, careful work of sifting. This involved passing the flour through a series of sieves, often made of fine horsehair linen, or sometimes even bronze mesh, stretched taut over a wooden frame. Each sieve had a progressively finer mesh, designed to separate the different components of the milled grain. The act of sifting was itself a rhythmic, almost meditative task. The miller would gently shake and agitate the sieve, causing the finer flour particles to drift down through the mesh, while the coarser bran remained on top. This created another soft, pervasive sound in the mill, the dry, rustling hiss of flour against mesh, the light tapping of the sieve against the frame, and the almost silent cascade of the finely separated flour into a clean receptacle below. The air around the sifting station would be even more impregnated with the fine dust of the flour. As it drifted and settled, it would subtly coat surfaces, giving them a soft, powdery sheen. In the shafts of light that penetrated the mill, these tiny particles would dance and shimmer, creating a constant, ethereal cloud, a visual representation of the transformation taking place. It was a beautiful, almost magical sight, tiny motes of sustenance suspended in the air. This separation was vital for producing different grades of flour. The finest, whitest flour, often referred to as siligo, was highly prized. It was reserved for the most delicate breads, the panis candidus, enjoyed by the wealthy and powerful. This flour, having passed through the finest sieves, was pure white, soft, and yielded a light, airy loaf. It was a luxury, a symbol of status. Below this, there were other grades. The flour that contained a bit more of the finer bran, sometimes called secundarium, would be used for more common breads, the daily sustenance for the average Roman citizen. It would have a slightly darker, creamier color and a heartier texture. And then, the coarsest bran left behind in the sieves would not be wasted. It was a valuable byproduct, often used for animal feed, or mixed into a much coarser, darker bread, sometimes for slaves or soldiers on campaign, providing robust, if not refined, nourishment. Even the farina siberia, the coarsest flour, served a critical purpose, ensuring nothing was wasted in an economy where every calorie counted. The miller's hands, throughout these processes, would become intimately acquainted with the flour. They would be coated in its fine dust, soft antry to the touch. With practiced movements, they would scoop and pour, sift and collect, constantly assessing the quality of the grind, the fineness of the flour, the efficiency of the separation. A skilled miller could tell simply by touch the millstones needed adjustment, if the grain was flowing correctly, if the output was consistent. This tactile feedback was as important as visual inspection. It was a silent language between the miller and his craft. The entire process, from the first gentle crack of the kernel to the final separation of the finest flour, was one of continuous, deliberate movement. There was no hurried rush, no sudden burst of activity. Instead, it was a steady, unyielding flow, a rhythm dictated by the turning stones, the falling water, or the slow, patient plod of the draft animals. This unhurried pace imbued the mill with a deep sense of tranquility, a space where time seemed to stretch and slow. Imagine the quiet hours passing within the mill. The outside world might hum with the sounds of a bustling Roman town or the distant cries of a farm. But inside, the sounds were contained, transformed. The thrum of the millstones, the splash of the water, the gentle whisper of falling flour, the soft rustle of sifting these, were the consistent notes of a profound and ancient symphony. There were sounds that would lull the mind, allowing thoughts to drift and settle, much like the flour itself. The cumulative effect of this constant transformation was immense. Hour after hour, day after day, week after week, the flour would accumulate. What began as individual, hard kernels of grain would become vast quantities of soft, malleable powder. Picture the sacks, carefully stitched from coarse linen or woven reeds, filling steadily with the precious white or off-white contents. Each sack, once full, represented countless hours of quiet grinding, a monumental effort distilled into a simple, fundamental commodity. These sacks, lined up in the storage areas of the mill, were the tangible evidence of its productivity. They were the foundation of every household's pantry, the basis for every baker's craft. From these humble sacks would come the daily bread that fed families, provided for soldiers on distant campaigns, and sustained the vast urban populations of the Roman Empire. The very fabric of society in many ways was woven from the steady output of these mills. The transformation of grain into flour is more than just a mechanical process. It is a fundamental act of preparing food, making sustenance accessible. Without this patient, repetitive grinding, the nutritious core of the grain would remain locked away, largely indigestible. It is a quiet miracle of engineering and human labor, turning potential into reality, making the staff of life available to all. The visual of the flour itself is captivating, has a softness that belies the strength it provides. In the dim light, oft mill, it might appear almost ethereal, a pale, almost glowing substance. When collected, it forms gentle dunes and valleys in the storage bins, its surface undisturbed, except by the constant trickle of new flour joining the pile. The way it catches and diffuses light is unique, absorbing harshness and reflecting a soft, warm glow. This gentle, unceasing flow of transformed grain, this consistent production of flour, speaks to the underlying stability that the Roman Empire strove for. In a world where food security was paramount, the operation of these mills was not just an economic activity, but a strategic imperative. The quiet, repetitive work within them was a constant reassurance, a promise that the basic needs of the populace would be met day after unhurried day. The miller, as he oversaw this constant process, would have developed a profound connection to the rhythm of his mill. He would observe the subtle shifts in the flour's texture, perhaps a slight variation in its color, indicating a change in the grain or a need for an adjustment. His hands, his eyes, his very being, would be attuned to the delicate balance required to maintain this steady, perfect flow. It was not a job demanding great speed, but immense patience, precision, and an almost intuitive understanding of the mill's workings. And so, the mill continues, its ceaseless hum, the stones turning, the grain transforming, and the flour emerging. It is a cyclope, quiet creation, a continuous act of turning the raw into the refined, the potential into the actual. Each particle of flour, once a part of a whole kernel, now contributes to a larger whole, ready to become bread. Ready to nourish, ready to fuel life. The whispers of flour, soft and constant, are the enduring sound of this fundamental transformation, a timeless melody of sustenance. As the whispers of flour fill the air, as the transformation completes its silent work, a new phase of the mill's unhurried rhythm begins, the gentle harvest. This is where the patient turning of the stones finds its tangible reward, where potential is realized, and the future sustenance of communities quietly awaits. Beneath the massive millstones, where the last vestiges of the grain structure yield to the grinding, an intricate system awaited the emerging flour. Imagine wooden chutes, smoothed by countless streams of fine powder, angled perfectly to guide this precious yield. These chutes, often crafted from meticulously joined planks, were not merely functional conduits. They were polished by the constant friction, their surfaces taking on a silky sheen, a testament to their ceaseless work. Each channel would lead the flour into wide, shallow collection troughs or bins, designed not for speed, but for the gentle settling of the delicate powder. These bins might be crafted from seasoned wood, perhaps oak or pine, chosen for its durability and its ability to remain cool, or sometimes carved from soft, inert stone, solid and unyielding. The consistent flow of flour over these surfaces would have given them an almost polished look, a luminous quality, despite the pervasive dusting of white. Where here the flour began its slow, graceful accumulation. It did not rush, but gathered with a steady, unhurried persistence, forming soft, undulating hills. Miniature dunes that shifted and grew with each passing moment. The pale, almost creamy color of the flour would be a striking contrast against the darker seasoned wood or the cool gray of the stone, like freshly fallen snow gathering in the hollows of a serene, quiet landscape. In the dim, filtered light that penetrated the mill, this accumulating bounty possessed a subtle luminescence, absorbing the harshness of the outside world and reflecting a diffused, gentle glow. It was a tangible testament to the tireless turning of the stones above, a silent celebration oft mill's unwavering purpose, a quiet manifestation of the grain's ultimate destiny. Each small mound was a promise, a comforting symbol of provision and continuity. The miller, deeply attuned to this rhythm, would approach his harvest with a quiet reverence, sense of profound respect for the transformative power he oversaw. His tools were simple, yet perfectly suited to their delicate task. A wide, shallow scoop, often crafted from a single piece of wood, meticulously hollowed out and smoothed, or cementums ingeniously woven from sturdy reeds, would be his primary implement. The edges of this scoop would be worn to a perfect contour, honed by endless use, designed to scrape clean the bottom and sides of the collection bins, without leaving even the smallest trace of the precious flour behind. Alongside it, a soft, densely bristled brush, made from tightly bound animal hair or natural fibers, would be employed for the most delicate of tasks, sweeping every last stray particle into the waiting scoop, ensuring absolute thoroughness. The very act of scooping was a meditative dance, a series of movements imbued with a quiet purpose. The miller's hand, strong from years of labor yet capable of immense delicacy, would guide the scoop with a deliberate slowness. There was no rush, no sudden, jarring movements that might disturb the settled flour or send unnecessary clouds of it into the air. Instead, the scoop would descend, carve a gentle arc through the flour, gathering it with a soft, almost hush whisper. The sound was barely perceptible, a faint, silken rustle as the fine powder yielded to the scoop's perfectly worn edge, a sound as soft as falling snow, creating a microclimate of stillness in the immediate vicinity of the collection bin. Each scoopful would be lifted with unwavering care, a small, perfect mound of flour balanced precariously, an offering of pure sustenance ready for its next stage. From the scoop, the flour would be gently poured into larger storage vessels. These were often large, sturdy sacks, woven from natural fibers such as hemp or linen. These sacks were not just containers, were carefully crafted vessels, designed to hold a significant weight of flour while allowing the contents to breathe, preventing moisture buildup. The mouth of the sack would be held wide open, perhaps suspended from a simple wooden frame or supported by an apprentice, as the miller meticulously emptied his scoop, his movements steady and precise. Theffler would cascade downwards, a soft, continuous stream, creating a small, muffled cloud as it settled within the sack. A cloud that momentarily diffused the light around it, adding to the ethereal atmosphere. The smell, a warm, earthy sweetness, would intensify around the opening of the sack, a comforting aroma of sustenance that spoke of wholesome goodness and honest labor. As the sack slowly filled, the miller would pause occasionally, perhaps giving it a gentle shake to encourage the flour to settle, consolidating its volume, making room for more, securing maximum capacity. With each scoop, with each sack filled, a tangible sense of accomplishment would subtly deepen the quiet atmosphere of the mill. The sacks, once limp and empty, now took on a substantial weight, their forms becoming rounded, firm, and solid. Lifting and moving these sacks was a task that demanded respect for their contents, a careful calibration of strength and balance. They were not merely bags of powder, they were the future mealsa of families, the energy for the city, the very foundation of daily life. The miller would feel this weight, a satisfying heft in his arms, knowing the long and arduous journey this grain had taken. From distant field to his mill, and now to its final stage, before the baker's skilled hands would transform it into bread. This physical connection to the product created a profound sense of purpose. In a Roman world where food security was paramount and sustenance precious, waste was unthinkable, a moral and economic transgression. Every grain mattered, every particle of flour was valued for its potential to nourish, thus the collection of the yield was an exercise in meticulousness, a demonstration of careful stewardship. After the main bulk of flour was gathered, the miller would employ his soft brush. He would sweep the ledges, the crevices, the seams of the collection bins, gathering even the finest dust that seemed to cling to every surface. No corner was left unchecked, no forgotten particle allowed to remain. Even the wooden floors immediately around the millstones, which inevitably caught some airborne flour, would be carefully swept. This wasn't just about cleanliness. It was about honoring the labor that produced the grain, maximizing the mill's output, and respecting the essential, life-giving nature of the product. These collected sweepings, perhaps slightly coarser or mixed with a bit of imperceptible grit, might be kept separate for other uses, perhaps for animal feed, or if deemed pure enough, might even be carefully rerun through the stones for a second, finer milling, a testament to the zero-waste philosophy. This process of collection was not a frantic rush to empty the bins, but another measured, rhythmic element of the mill's unhurried day. It interwove seamlessly with the constant grinding. While one batch of flour was being gathered and prepared for storage, more was steadily emerging from the tireless stones. There was a continuous flow, a cyclical harmony that permeated the entire structure. The miller might fill one sack, tie it securely, and then move to another collection point, ensuring no bin overflowed, no precious flour was lost. He might take a moment to inspect the flour he was gathering, feeling its texture between his fingers, allowing it to sift slowly from one palm to the other, checking for consistency, for any unwelcome grit or unevenness. His experienced eyes, honed by years of observation, would instantly detect any anomaly, any subtle deviation from the expected perfection of the yield. This constant vigilance was part of his craft. There was a profound, quiet satisfaction in this part of the work, a deep fulfillment that resonated in the silent corners of the mill. The miller was not just an operator. He was a guardian of sustenance, a vital link in the chain of life. As he gathered the flour, he was performing an act of quiet creation, bringing forth the very raw material of bread, the foundation of every meal. He would often run his hand over the smooth, taut surface of a freshly filled sack, a gesture of quiet pride, a silent acknowledgement of a job well done. This was the fruit of the mill's patient labor, the tangible proof of its ceaseless turning, a visible manifestation of the hours spent. It represented nourishment, life, and the stable order that Rome valued so deeply. The bedrock upon which its society was built was the dusty white film that coated his hands, his clothes, even his eyelashes and hair. It was not a nuisance but a badge of honor, a testament to a day spent in honest, vital work. Once filled, the sacks would be carefully sealed. This involved rolling down the top of the sack several times, Anthon tying it securely with a stout cord or a strong leather thong. preventing any spillage and protecting the precious contents from moisture, dust, or potential pests. These heavy sacks would then be carefully maneuvered and stacked in a designated storage area within the mill, perhaps a cooler, drier section. Away from the immediate dust and vibration of the grinding stones, they might be stacked in neat, orderly rows, forming small white mountains, each sack a silent promise of future meals, a repository of energy. This organized arrangement not only maintained the mill's tidiness, but also made the eventual loading and transport of the flour more efficient. When the time came, these substantial sacks would be carefully loaded onto carts or wagons, destined for the bakeries of the bustling city, or for direct distribution to households, or, perhaps most critically, for the legions themselves, fueling the very engines of Roman power. Each sack of flour carried within it more than just milled grain. It carried the story off the fields, the dedicated labor of the farmers, the engineering ingenuity of the Romans, and the patient, unwavering dedication of the miller. It was the material link, both physical and metaphorical, between the vast agricultural hinterlands and the bustling urban centers, a vital commodity that literally fueled the empire. The gentle harvest in the mill was, in its own way, as significant as the harvest in the fields, for it transformed raw potential into usable sustenance, making life possible day after day. Without this careful collection, the entire arduous process, from planting to grinding, would be incomplete, rendered meaningless. And the promise of bread would remain unfulfilled. Even after the sacks were filled and removed, a subtle, pervasive presence of flour remained. A fine, almost invisible dust would cling to the air, to the rough-hewn wooden beams, to the very fabric of the mill's structure. It coated the miller's hair, settled on his brow, and worked its way into the seams of his tunic. It was a constant, gentle reminder of the day's work, a pervasive, soft embrace that softened the sharp edges of the world. It's a taste of it, a faint, starchy sweetness. This might linger on the tongue, a clean, wholesome reminder of the mill's core purpose. This omnipresent dust, far from being bothersome, became an integral part of the mill's identity, a signature of its tireless, quiet activity. It softened the edges of the room, diffusing light and sound in a unique way, contributing to the overall gentle, almost ethereal atmosphere. As the last sack was tied and stacked, the mill would not fall silent. The rhythmic turning off the stones would continue its ceaseless hum, the sifting of new grain would persist, and the gentle whisper of fresh flour would once again begin to fill the collection bins. The harvest was not a singular event that ended the day, but a continuous part of the mill's ongoing work. A cyclical, unwavering process that played out hour after hour, day after day, year after year. It was a microcosm of Roman efficiency and endurance, a testament to the power of continuous, purposeful repetition, a slow-motion ballet of productivity. Imagine the serene satisfaction of seeing these sacks filled, knowing that each one represents provision, stability, and nourishment. The quiet hum of the mill, the soft rustle of flour, the rhythmic, deliberate actions of the miller, all combine to create an environment of profound calm. There is a deep, almost primal comfort in observing a process so essential, so consistent, and so utterly dedicated to sustaining life. It is a slow ballet of purpose, a gentle harvest that quietly underpins the entire world around it, offering a sense of peace that few other activities could truly match, a timeless rhythm that invites you to simply be and to witness. And as that timeless rhythm unfolds, inviting us to simply be and to witness, it isn't merely a fleeting moment, but a persistent pattern, repeating itself with each dawn and each dusk. Roman mill, far from being a static structure, breathed with the very cycle of the day, its ancient heart beating to an unhurried, yet unwavering rhythm. Imagine, if you will, the deep hush of the pre-dawn hours. The world outside is still cloaked in a velvet darkness, perhaps the distant, faint sound of a Roman sentry's call, or the soft stirring of a sleepy city, just beginning to contemplate the coming light. Within the mill, however, there is an even deeper quietude, a profound stillness that precedes the day's work. The air is cool, perhaps a touch damp with the night's breath, carrying the lingering, earthy scent of grain and stone. The millstones, now at rest, stand like ancient sentinels, silent and massive, their surfaces smooth and cool to the touch. Then, with the first hint of gray light at the horizon, or perhaps even before, when only oil lamps cast flickering shadows, the miller stirs. His movements are deliberate, unhurried, born of years of practiced routine. There is no rush, no frantic energy, only a calm preparedness.
Aye!
He might stoke a small fire for warmth, the crackle of kindling a sharp brief sound against the pervasive quiet. He prepares his tools, checks the chutes, inspects the bins. Each action is precise, economical, a silent ritual of readiness. The first task is to set the mill in motion. If water-powered, this involves the careful opening of sluice gates, a slow, gentle operation that allows the water to begin its journey. Initially, there might be a soft gurgle, then a low rumble as the mighty wheel begins to reluctantly turn, shaking off the night's inertia. The wooden gears, stiff from the cold, might creak and groan, protesting their awakening. A deep, resonant sound that reverberates through the heavy timbers of the mill house. This initial awakening is a gradual symphony, slowly building note by note. As the wheel gains momentum, its rhythmic turning becomes more assured, a steady, powerful hum. The main shaft begins its slow revolution, translating the water's energy into the circular motion off the upper millstone. The initial sound of the stones themselves might be a dry, scraping whisper as they find their alignment after hours of stillness. But soon, as the first measure of grain is carefully poured into the hopper, that whisperedness forms, becomes a soft, sustained crunch, then a consistent, low growl, a sound that speaks of ancient forces at work. The individual kernels, tumbling into the void between the stones, add their own faint trickling song to the growing chorus. The light outside begins to brighten, filtering through small, high windows, painting the dust-filled air with a gentle, diffused glow. Motes of flour dust, disturbed by the vibration of the mill, dancing these shafts of light like tiny ethereal spirits. The mill, now fully awake, hums with a deep, pervasive energy. It is a sound that fills the space, not aggressively, but with a comforting, almost maternal presence. It is sound of purpose, of sustenance, of the day's work well underway. Throughout the morning, the rhythm remains unwavering. The miller, having initiated the process, now adopts a role of attentive guardianship. He watches the flow of grain, ensuring it is constant and even. He listens intently to the stones, his ear finely tuned to any subtle change in their grinding song. An experienced ear able to discern if they are running true, if the grain is feeding correctly, if the flour is being produced at the optimal rate. A slight alteration in pitch or volume might indicate a need for adjustment, a testament to the miller's intimate knowledge of his ancient machinery. His hands, dusted with the fine white powder, move with an unhurried grace. He might periodically check the emerging flour, feeling its texture between his thumb and forefinger, assessing its fineness, its purity. The scent of warm, freshly ground grain fills the air, a wholesome, comforting aroma that settles deep into the senses. It is a smell of honest labor, of the earth's bounty transformed. The flour begins to accumulate in the collection bins, soft, growing tide of white, slowly but surely rising throughout the morning hours. The external world with its Roman bustle and clamor seems distant, held at bay by the mill's thick stone walls and its internal, all-consuming rhythm. Within these walls, time seems to stretch and slow, each minute a measured, deliberate beat in the mill's heart. The focus is entirely on the task at hand, the ceaseless turning of the stones, the patient reduction of grain to flour. There is a profound meditation in this repetitive work, a quiet discipline that invites the mind to settle, to shed external worries, and to simply exist within the present moment. As morning gives way to the gentle warmth of midday, the mill's rhythm persists, unbroken. The sun hangs higher, its light stronger, though still softened by the ancient walls and the ever-present flour dust. The miller might take a brief, simple meal, perhaps a piece of bread and some cheese, eaten right there within the mill, the constant drone of the stones his companion. Even in this moment of rest, his awareness remains tuned to the mill's pulse, an almost subconscious monitoring of its steady operation. The sounds are now so familiar, so ingrained, that they airless perceived as individual noises, and more as a single, enveloping hum, a living presence. The routine becomes almost instinctive. Emptying the full bins, sifting the flour to remove any stray husks or impurities, carefully pouring fresh grain into the hopper. These actions are performed with an economy of motion, a quiet efficiency born of countless repetitions. The miller's body knows the dance, the exact pressure to apply, the precise timing required. It is a slow ballet of purpose, each movement contributing to the continuous flow of production. The temperature within the mill might rise slightly with the midday sun, but the coolness of the massive stone walls and the constant, slight movement of air created by the turning mechanisms help to maintain a comfortable, if somewhat dusty environment. The light shifts subtly, creating new patterns of shadow and illumination across the rough-hewn timbers and the smooth-worn surfaces of the stones. It is a dynamic yet utterly calm environment where the only urgency is the steady, unceasing demand for flour. The afternoon unfolds with the same deliberate pace, a continuation of the morning's work, but with a deepening sense of the day's journey. The light, now beginning its slow descent towards evening, casts longer, softer shadows. The air inside the mill might feel heavier, richer with the scent of flour, imbued with the constant vibrations. The millstones continue their patient embrace, their low growl, a constant presence, the heart of the entire operation. For the miller, the afternoon often brings an even deeper sense of immersion. The initial checks and adjustments of the morning are long past, and the process has settled into a comfortable, established flow. His movements are now almost automatic, guided by a deep, muscle memory understanding of the mill. He might find himself lost in thought, or simply in the profound quietude that such repetitive, focused work can bring. The external world, with its political intriges, its social demands, its hurried pace, feels utterly distant, an echo rather than a reality. Here in the mill, there is only the grain, the stone, the water, and the transformation. The rhythmic churning off, the great water wheel outside, the endless turning of the gears, the soft, sustained hiss of the stones, the gentle trickling of grain, these sounds meld into a single hypnotic soundscape. It is a sound designed to soothe, to quiet the racing mind, to encourage a state of relaxed awareness. The accumulation of flour in the bins continues its steady, almost imperceptible rise. A tangible measure of the day's quiet progress, a symbol of the tireless provision it represents for the community. As the sun begins its final, slow dip towards the horizon, casting a warm, golden light through the mill's windows, the day's work begins its gentle transition. The miller might start to clear the last off the day's orders, bagging the freshly ground flour, tying each sack with practiced ease. The sacks, now full and heavy, are stacked neatly, a satisfying testament to hours of patient labor. Each one represents not just flour, but nourishment, security, and the quiet dedication of the miller. The sounds of the mill do not cease with the fading light, but they shift subtly. The miller's active oversight might lessen as he prepares for the close of his own day. But the water wheel, if river-fed and without a need to conserve water, might continue its turning through the night, its stones gently grinding a slow, steady stream of grain. For the miller, however, the active portion of his day draws to a close. He performs his evening rituals, a final inspection of the machinery, a light cleaning, ensuring everything is ready for the next dawn. The air, now cooler as darkness descends, still carries the pervasive scent of flour, perhaps even more strongly now that the heat of the day has dissipated. The dust motes, less visible in the dimming light, settle slowly, gently covering every surface in a fine, soft layer. The mill, even in the miller's absence, maintains its quiet, purposeful hum, a guardian of sustenance, a silent engine of Roman life. Leaving the mill at the end of such a day, the miller carries with him not just the dust of the flour on his clothes, but a profound sense of calm. His muscles might be tired, but his mind is likely quieted, cleansed by the day's rhythmic focus, ceaseless grinding, the patient transformation, the continuous flow of grain. These are not merely tasks, but a deep, almost spiritual engagement with the fundamental processes of life. The day's unhurried rhythm, though demanding, also offers a unique form of peace. a meditative immersion in work that is both essential and timeless. It is a gentle, persistent beat that reverberates not only through the mill's ancient timbers, but also through the very heart of the one who tends it. A soothing echo that lingers long after the day's work has formally ended. As the day formally draws to a close and the miller departs, the quiet echoes of the mill linger, a gentle, persistent beat that reverberates not only through the ancient timbers, but also through the very heart of the one who tends it. This soothing echo lingers long after the work has formally ended, carrying with it a profound sense of calm that is unique to the world of the Roman mill. We have traveled together through the steady, unhurried rhythm of this ancient world, observing the meticulous preparation, the patient pour of grain, the ceaseless turn of the millstones, and the quiet triumph of the flour's emergence. It is in this sustained rhythm, this deep immersion in repetitive motion, that we find a tranquility that transcends time, a quiet power that speaks to us, even now millennia later. The journey we have taken has been one not of dramatic battles or grand pronouncements, but of the ceaseless quiet work that formed the very bedrock of Roman society. It is a story told in the persistent rush of water, the low rumble of stone, and the soft whisper of grain. A narrative woven from the threads of countless identical movements, each one contributing to an essential whole. This dedication to repetition, tough, predictable and unchanging, is precisely what imbues the Roman mill with its enduring power to soothe and calm. In our modern world, we often view repetition as monotonous, something to be escaped or optimized away. We crave novelty, excitement, and constant stimulation, fearing the dullness that sameness might bring. Yet, within the ancient confines of the mill, repetition was not a burden, but a blessing. It offered a profound sense of stability and order in a world that, outside the mill's stout walls, could often be chaotic and unpredictable. Each turn of the water wheel, each revolution of the upper stone upon the lower, each individual grain transformed into flour, was a testament to consistency. There were no sudden surprises, no jarring shifts, no urgent demands for immediate attention that broke the spell of its tranquil operation. The very predictability of the process became a source of comfort, a reliable anchor in the flow of time. Imagine for a moment letting your mind drift back into that space. Feel the subtle vibration through the sturdy wooden floorboards beneath your feet, a low thrum that resonates deep within your chest. Hear the water, an unwavering constant presence, a liquid pulse that divests the heart of the mill. It is not an aggressive roar, but a steady, almost comforting gurgle and splash. A perpetual lullaby crafted by nature and channeled by ingenuity. This continuous, unchanging sound acts as a natural white noise, enveloping Thespace, gently buffering the miller from any extraneous distractions. Then, there's the sound of the millstones themselves, a sound we have come to know intimately. It is not a harsh, grating shriek, but a deep, resonant rumble, a patient, sustained murmur as the hard surfaces meet and slowly, deliberately transform. Beneath that, perhaps, you can still hear the soft shoo-shush of the grain as it feeds into the oculus, a gentle rain of sustenance, a quiet promise of what is to come. These sounds, when experienced over hours, over days, over years, weave themselves into the very fabric of being, creating a mental landscape that is utterly devoid of sharp-edged, jarring notes. Even the visual experience within the mill contributes to this enduring calm. The steady, circular motion of the water wheel, catching and releasing the sunlight through the open archways, is hypnotic in its regularity. The slow, unceasing cascade of grain from the hopper, a continuous golden stream, mesmerizes the eye with its unwavering flow. And the flour, emerging in a soft, steady stream from between the stones, is a visual metaphor for patient, consistent progress. There is no urgency in these movements, only a deep, abiding persistence, a slow, beautiful dance of transformation that unfolds with quiet dignity. The pervasive scent of the mill also played its part in this sensory cocoon. The earthy, sweet aroma off-grain, mingling with the subtle, dry scent of newly ground flour, becomes a constant, comforting presence in the air. This is not a sharp, stimulating smell, but one that is soft, warm, and deeply reassuring, reminiscent of harvest, of home, of the very essence of life itself. even the fine, soft dust that settles gently upon every surface. A tangible byproduct of the mill's tireless work, contributes to the feeling of being enveloped, of being a part of this gentle, productive world. What emerges from this synthesis of sound, sight, and scent, all governed by the principle of relentless repetition, is a profound sense of peace. The human mind, when exposed to such consistent, predictable sensory input, naturally begins to unwind. It releases the tension of anticipating the next unexpected event, because in the mill, there are no true unexpected events. There is only the steady, comforting rhythm of what has been, what is, and what will continue to be. It is an environment designed, perhaps unwittingly, to gently lull the mind into a state of quiet contemplation, a soft waking dream. The miller, living within this repetitive world day after day, year after year, developed a unique relationship with his work. It was not merely a job, but a way of life, a meditation in motion. His focus would have been drawn inward, towards the precise flow of the grain. The subtle adjustments of the stones, the quality of the flour, this intense, yet non-stressful focus would have allowed his mind to quiet the incessant chatter of daily concerns. The rhythmic engagement with the task becomes a form of mindfulness, a complete absorption in the present moment, where past anxieties and future worries simply fade into the background. There is a quiet dignity in this kind of labor, a fundamental importance that transcends any perceived boring quality. The miller was not just turning stones. He was ensuring sustenance for his community, providing fairy staff of life. This knowledge that his steady, repetitive work was essential and vital would have brought a deep and abiding sense of satisfaction. It is not the fleeting pride of a grand achievement, but the quiet, enduring contentment that comes from contributing consistently and reliably to the well-being of others. This contrasts sharply with many pursuits in our contemporary world, where the pursuit of meaning often involves grand narratives, spectacular displays, or the constant search for novelty. Theremin Miller, by contrast, found his meaning in the unchanging, in the persistent, in the simple act of transformation. His fulfillment was in the reliable emergence of flour, the consistent turning of the wheel, the unbroken promise of nourishment. This quiet, steady purpose is a powerful antidote to the restlessness of the modern spirit, inviting us to find value in the gentle rhythm of essential tasks. And this quiet rhythm, this patient transformation, has echoed through history for millennia. When we contemplate a Roman mill, we are not merely looking at an isolated historical artifact. We are connecting with a thread of human experience that stretches back to the dawn of civilization. The basic act of grinding grain to make flour is one of the oldest, most fundamental human endeavors. Imagine all the millers who have stood in similar spaces, hearing similar sounds, feeling similar vibrations, carrying similar dust on their clothes across countless centuries. The Roman miller's day, filled with these repetitive yet essential tasks, links him directly to his ancestors, who used hand corns, and to his descendants, who would operate even more complex machinery, yet always with the same core purpose. It is a shared human constant, a quiet testament to our enduring need to create, to transform, to sustain ourselves. This connection to a timeless, unchanging process can be deeply grounding, reminding us of the persistent threads that weave through the vast tapestry of human history. It offers a gentle perspective on the grand sweep of time, placing our fleeting concerns into a larger, more peaceful context. This deep dive into the repetitive grinding of grain, this exploration of the Roman mill's quiet mechanics, is precisely why this particular corner of history is so uniquely suited for quiet contemplation and ultimately for sleep. It is a narrative utterly devoid of conflict, drama, or any of the stressors that typically keep our minds racing. There are no heroes to root for, no villains to despise, no complex plots to unravel. Instead, there is only the consistent, predictable, and deeply calming flow of an ancient process. The boring aspect in this context is not a criticism, but a deliberate design choice. It is the absence of stimulation, the lack of narrative tension, the gentle predictability of the historical subject matter that allows the mind to truly relax. There are no sudden surprises to jolt you awake, no emotional peaks to keep your heart racing. Instead, the story off the Roman mill offers a safe, predictable mental landscape where the imagination can roam gently, tracing the path of the water, the turn of the stones, the cascade of the grain, without ever encountering anything that demands alertness or analysis. It isned historical narrative that cradles the mind, much like the mill cradles the grain, slowly and gently transforming a restless awareness into a state of deep tranquility. The enduring calm of this repetition, the quiet hum of purpose, the gentle flow-off transformation. These are the elements that create a unique lullaby from the annals of history. They invite you to let go of your own day's complexities, to release the grip of your own racing thoughts, to simply allow yourself to be enveloped by the steady, unhurried rhythm of an ancient, peaceful world. So, as we bring our journey through the Roman mill to its gentle close, I invite you to carry with you the lingering echoes of its operation. Let the steady rush of the water continue to murmur in your mind's ear. Feel the subtle, rhythmic vibration of the grinding stones, a deep, comforting thrum that resonates with ancient peace. Recall the ceaseless flow of grain, a golden waterfall of potential. In the soft, silent emergence of the flower, a symbol of patient, consistent transformation, these quiet, persistent rhythms, though from a distant past, hold within them a timeless lesson that profound peace can often be found not in grand events or sudden revelations, but in the enduring, the repetitive, and the seemingly mundane. There is a deep, almost spiritual beauty in the consistent turning. In the patient process, in the quiet dignity of essential work, the Roman mill, in its simplicity and tireless repetition, offers a profound reminder of this truth. A gentle whisper from history that stillness and calm are always within reach, particularly when we allow ourselves to tune into the slow, steady beat of the world around us. May these ancient rhythms, these whispers of flower and stone, these echoes of enduring calm, now gently guide your own mind towards a state of profound rest and peaceful slumber. Let the repetitive turning of the water wheel, the patient grinding of the stones, and the soft, continuous flow of grain wash over you, carrying away any lingering thoughts, leaving you only with the quiet, soothing certainty of a world that turns steadily onward, ever so gently. And so, as the final dust motes settle in the golden shafts of sunlight within our ancient Roman mill, we leave Lucius to his quiet, steady rhythm. His work, an unbroken chain of small, significant actions, continues long after our journey concludes, testament to the enduring simplicity of a life lived in harmony with the earth's bounty and the tireless flow of water. The gentle turn of the wheel, the deep whisper of stone on grain, the soft sigh of emerging flower. These are the lullabies of a world both distant and eternally present. May you carry this quiet certainty, this unhurried peace with you now. Let the consistent, comforting beat of the ancient mill resonate within your own mind, easing away any lingering thoughts or worries. Allow the image of the golden grain, endlessly flowing, and the soft, cool touch of fresh flower to settle your spirit. And as the echoes of the water wheel slowly recede, may you find yourself embraced by a profound calm, drifting effortlessly towards the deepest, most restorative sleep. Rest now with the gentle rhythm of history as your guide. Thank you for joining us on this journey into the peaceful depths of history. If you found a moment of calm with us today, please consider subscribing to Whisper Vale for more forgotten tales and tranquil journeys. We have many other stories waiting to unfold, ready to guide you towards a state of deep relaxation. Until next time, may your nights be filled with serenity and your days with gentle peace.